Okay, MSKR on GMAT Club recently requested that I give this question an explanation, and so I thought I would take him up on it. This is a GMAT Critical Reasoning, aka CR question. All right, so here we go. When a caterpillar emerges from the egg on a tree branch, it immediately climbs upward until it finds a leaf bud to eat. Biologists thought that this behavior displayed an innate tendency to move in the direction opposite to the pull of gravity. In a recent experiment, a strong light source was placed at the bottom of a tree, and caterpillars, after hatching, climbed downward. Which of the following hypotheses is best supported by the statements given? Okay, so, feel free to read this stimulus, this paragraph multiple times if you need to. If you misunderstand it, you're probably going to get the question wrong. You have to put in the time to understand the prompt or the stimulus or whatever you want to call it. The first thing I notice here is that, the experiment isn't really, it might appear at first to sort of disprove what the biologist thought, because we notice that caterpillars are moving upward after they emerge from their eggs until it finds a leaf bud to eat. Presumably that's the reason why it climbs upward, at least after you've read the first sentence. But then we're told that biologists think maybe it has something to do with gravity. But then we do this recent experiment. We place a light source at the bottom of a tree, and caterpillars climb downward toward that light source, right? Now, does this disprove what biologists thought? If you think that, then you're probably going to get this question wrong. Why is that the case? Well, this is a which question, right? For a which question, you're normally going to want to go straight to the answers, or at least quickly to the answers, and work off the answers more quickly than the average question. Pro tip. So let's do that. A, caterpillars have an innate tendency to move in the direction of gravity. So that's the answer for people who think that the biologists' hypothesis is being disproven here, right? But the problem is, we're not testing the variable of gravity. We can't change the direction of gravity, and obviously, so instead we place a light source at the bottom of the tree, and we find out that the caterpillars climb downward toward that light source, right? Now, does that prove the opposite of what biologists thought? That's the trap of choice A, right? Just because we can get the caterpillars to move downward toward the light doesn't prove that they move in the opposite direction of gravity. We haven't changed the direction of gravity just by putting a light at the bottom, right? So choice A, no, incorrect. Choice B, newly hatched caterpillars are unable to see in the dark. Okay, well, it might seem like that at first because we are, climbing upward toward the sun, presumably, and then climbing downward toward the light source. But there's not enough information about, whether caterpillars can see in this passage at all. It's a classic out of scope answer, right? We might know that they move toward light, but that doesn't tell us anything about whether they can see or can't see, right? It doesn't tell us anything about their vision per se. So no on B. Choice C, newly hatched caterpillars move toward the strongest light source in the environment. Is clearly supported by the second statement, right? Of course, we're looking for a hypothesis that's supported by both statements. The main statements in this question are the first sentence and the third sentence. The second sentence being more of a hypothesis itself. Clearly the third sentence tells us that the caterpillars climb downward toward the light source. That's obvious. The first statement may be a little bit more of an inference, but clearly the sun is up. That's logical. That's not, it's a stretch to call that outside information, right? That's just logic, right? And so climbing upward toward the sun, finding a leaf bud to eat, it is supported by both statements. So it's our best answer so far. Choice D, newly hatched caterpillars move toward the leaf bud nearest to them. Clearly supported by the first statement, but definitely a decoy answer in that it has nothing to do with the last statement. And again, we need it to be supported by both statements. So cross off D. And then finally E, the eyes of newly hatched caterpillars become less sensitive to light over time. Just out of scope again. First of all, over time, how is that being tested at all in this question? The passage of time is completely unrelated. And, again, it reminds me of choice B. Caterpillars are unable to see. How do we know that, right? Just because they move toward light doesn't tell us anything about their vision. And E is quite similar to B in that case. So presumably our answer here is C. Let's check it to make sure. C, correct. All right, 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Good luck on your GMAT.